of your own. And
Okay.
there's 1,300 cakes there. And all you do is eat cake for a picnic.
I'm gonna go ahead and then look that up later.
If
Yeah.
you like cake, you said.
That sounds
So-
amazing,
So
yeah.
I feel like you would let that be up your stuff.
A cake picnic.
I'm serious. To get in, all you need is to bring a cake.
Okay.
Wait, what is this?
Yeah.
It's called Cake Picnic in San Francisco.
Okay. Road trip, let's go, right? I'm ready. I'm like, we can be there by lunchtime if we hurry. Right? That sounds amazing.
It looks really good, but everyone's at the box.
Uh-huh.
And 20 minutes, put everything you want in the box, and then you sit in the picnic with your friends and you eat cake together.
I'm sold. That sounds amazing. I'll go look that up.
I go, I'll get you.
I'm going in July, but I imagine it's on like a specific.
I'm going
Time.
in May because my brothers, they were moving him out.
Uh-huh.
Because he was living here, but he's finishing his first year of school.
Okay.
And but there's, and he was saying, oh, you don't have to come. I was like, oh no, I'm gonna go, I'm gonna fly. You guys guys.
Oh, right
I'm
on.
not gonna drive.
They're driving the, we were just talking, it's a long drive.
It's a long one, but if you do it effectively, it
Yeah,
can be fast.
That's true. It's all about the traffic. All right, good morning.
Oh.
How is everyone? Hanging in there? It's gonna get so warm this week. We were talking about how warm it's gonna be. It's gonna be like 87 on Friday.
Finally.
You're like, yeah, I'm like.
I need some color. I need some color in me. I've been a vampire all year.
My feet are very, very white from soccer. I always have my sock tan. My kids always make fun of me for it. So I should probably go out in the sun this weekend or
Maybe.
something. Maybe. Go to the beach. That sounds fun to me, right? I had another thought. Anyway, I wrote this up here. I'll talk about it at the end. Our exam is on Wednesday, right? So I won't see you Wednesday. We remember, just like last time, we won't have in-person class. It'll be online. I'll talk more about it at the end, but I put it up there just to make sure that you remember. I'll also send out an announcement Tuesday night, just to make sure it's on your mind as well. We have a little bit left, so we're gonna finish up substance use disorders today. I have another little case study that we'll do, kind of like the one that we did for eating disorders. Also, I graded all of the second parts of your paper. So I don't know if you saw your score, hopefully you did see that. And most of you got the full 40 points, which is fantastic. Those of you who lost points, a few people didn't give me a source. A few people gave me like a .com source, so you got half credit. And a couple of people maybe not as much progress as I would have liked, but I would say the vast majority of you got 40 points on it, which is fantastic. We do have one more part of that paper. It's not due until May. So you have some time. It's due basically about a month from today, but we'll start talking about that as we get a little bit closer. There's one or two little APA formatting things that I want to kind of teach you and have you try out. Otherwise, it'll just be building on what you put out there. So I want to throw out there as well that at any point between now and when the final paper is due, if you have a draft that you want me to look over, I'm more than happy to do so. So at any point between now and maybe like that week that it's due, you can always email it to me. I'll take a look at it and give some feedback. But from here, you're just going to kind of build on what you've done so far. And a lot of like really fun character choices. So I'm looking forward to your final papers. So we'll jump back into this. Like I said, we don't have a lot left. So we introduced the idea of psychoactive drugs, lots and lots of different substances that we can generally break down to depressants that slow you down, stimulants that speed you up, and hallucinogens that distort your perception. And when we talk about the use of drugs, people can have a short-term pattern of use or a long-term pattern of use. Now, we're more interested in the long-term problematic patterns from like a mental illness standpoint. But if somebody uses a substance and it creates like a temporary state, we call that intoxication, right? If someone's intoxicated, they are feeling the effects of a substance. It changes their behavioral components, their psychological like processes, their thinking patterns. When you take a substance, when you ingest it, it creates a temporary state of being intoxicated. Whether that's alcohol or marijuana or a prescribed medication or something much more like calm and common like caffeine, it can create a temporary state. And I think, as I mentioned last time, a lot of people use substances periodically, and they're okay. They don't develop like a problematic long-term pattern. But then there are some people who use a substance once, and that's one time too many. And the tricky thing is you often just have no idea how you're going to respond to a substance, which is what makes them so kind of scary and unpredictable at times. So when people develop like a long-term pattern, we call that a substance use disorder. And if you remember back when we talked about like those criteria for every single disorder, it can't be the result of a general medical condition or a substance. So this is where we look at the effects of substances specifically. So we would specify the drug. So we'd say substance use disorder, alcohol, or substance use disorder, cocaine, whatever it might be. We specify which drug you're using and abusing. And this is a problematic pattern that kind of combines two disorders we used to have. In the DSM-4, we had a disorder called abuse and a disorder called dependence. And the tricky thing was like almost everybody had both of them. So in the DSM-5, they combined them together to one disorder, which is just substance use disorder. And there's an incredible number of like symptoms that come with this disorder. There's a lot of different things that people can kind of manifest. And it's something that is long-term. So we see that somebody is showing a bunch of different signs over a year or more. So it's not just like a couple of times. This is a long-term problematic pattern. Now I have a little video that introduces some of these criteria here, and then I'll write them up on the board for you. Let me pause this. I'll play it for you real fast. Goes over some of those symptoms, and I'll write some of them up here on the board, but it's the long-term problematic pattern. Again, this isn't an occasional instance of use. It's two or more of a ton of different symptoms over 12 months or more. Okay, so a year, right? A year of somebody showing a bunch of different symptoms. So some of the things that we see is you take more and more over time. So increased use over time. Okay, so maybe you start out with like using 1 cup of coffee, and then it's 2, and then it's 3. Like you increase the amount of the substance over time. It just slowly and progressively starts to increase. You have a desire to cut down. You have a desire to reduce the amount that you're using, right? You often want to, but unsuccessful efforts to cut down, right? So you want to take less, and maybe you even try to take less, but you end up kind of defaulting back to taking more and more of that substance. And that's a key piece that a lot of people know that it's a problem and they want to cut down, but they struggle to do so. You spend a lot of time related to the drug. Time thinking about it, time using it, time recovering from it, time trying to get it, right? A lot of time and energy goes into thinking about, wanting, using, acquiring the substance. A lot of time, right? It takes up your time and energy. You have failures to fulfill obligations. You aren't getting the things done that you need to because of your use of this substance or the result of using the substance. Maybe you can't get to class because you're so hungover. You have a hard time getting your homework done because you're too busy using the substance, right? It's affecting your life. You're not able to fulfill your obligations. You continue to use it despite all the problems. So continue to use despite problems. Right, so even though it's interfering with your life, even though it's maybe causing you money you didn't have, you're getting into trouble with the law from it, you continue to use it anyway. Right, it's a very common element of this. Let's see what else. It puts you in situations that are hazardous or dangerous. Right, whether that's driving under the influence or like something that's physically dangerous or hazardous for you. You have a lot of like tolerance. And this is a really common one when you use a substance, even something as mild as coffee, right? Tolerance is when you need more and more of the same drug to get the same effect, right? And so that kind of leads to this one of how you end up using more of it over time. And so I remember when I was in graduate school, I worked at Starbucks. It was like one of my favorite jobs that I've ever had. I loved working there because I could work from like 4 in the morning to 9 and then go to school. And like I still had the whole day. I was caffeinated for free. I loved it. I loved making drinks. But I remember when I first started working there, they asked me when in the interview, even before then, they asked me what I liked about coffee. And I hated coffee. I thought coffee tasted, I hadn't discovered like caramel and coffee yet. So I didn't like coffee at all. And so I gave them some answer of how it was like the great social facilitator and people, fall in love and meet over coffee. And I got hired, right? It was a good answer, I think. And then I remember that first week having to try all these little samples of coffee so that I could describe them to people. And I would try it and be like, it tastes like dirt, really bad dirt that's gone really bad. None of them tasted good. But even just this much coffee, right, was enough to make me feel like wired out of my mind. Because I didn't grow up drinking coffee. I wasn't a big fan of coffee. And then slowly over time, like I could handle those without a problem. I could go to the next size and the next size and the next size. I developed a tolerance for it over time. And I would see this in my customers too, right? They would come in and they'd start off with like a tall, and then it was a grande, and then it was a triple grande, and then it was like a quad venti, and then we're adding and adding and adding. Because over time, it doesn't do the same thing for you anymore, right? And so you have to progressively up the dosage in order to get the same effect. And that's called tolerance. It just doesn't work the same way. And if you take a break from a substance for a short period of time, your body might reset a little bit. But if you stop using it, you also get withdrawal, which is a big thing that we see here too, where you feel awful when you don't get the substance. You get headaches, you feel tired, right? Your body has become physically dependent on the substance. And so when you no longer have it, you feel lousy, right? And so that then leads people to go back to using it again so that they feel better. And it's the awful cycle of trying to get off of it, but you feel horrible, so you go back on it. And again, this can be with any substance, but really, really common to see this pattern of like tolerance and withdrawal kind of in a circular pattern that people struggle with. Any like thoughts or comments or anything at the moment? Yeah. Yeah, we'll talk about this one in a minute. So this one is when something else is caused by by a substance. So we'll get there in a second. They're a little different, but they overlap a little bit too. Anything about substance use for now? I felt like a drug pusher when I worked at Starbucks. Like people would like pull up to the drive-through all cranky and mad and like really like angry, and I'd hand them their drink and you could just see the like happiness like wash over them, and I'm like, it's that cup I just gave you, right? A lot of that, even in something as mild as coffee. Yeah, right. Oh wow.
Not for credit for like Apple Card.
Yeah.
And I'm like, like I can't tell her like, dude, like you don't need it. Like, let me just give it to you for free.
Right.
But like it's so bad.
Yeah.
And she'd come back every day.
Uh-huh.
And it's like, you know what I mean? Like, it's
right.
bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, and we're talking about something as mild as coffee, but like, I mean, and take that to a more intense substance and you get the same things. It's just we don't see it as visibly, right? Yeah.
An increased amount of that substance. There's a guy that comes through almost every single day.
Yeah.
And he gets an Americano with
8 shots. Wow.
That's like double the daily limit.
Yeah, that's a lot.
I calculated it.
Yeah.
It's double the daily limit. Like, buddy, I hope you're okay.
Right.
And he comes every day.
That's a
And
lot.
I'm like, buddy, I thought initially that he was just gonna, make it last over a couple days.
Yeah.
He was saying it's funny, I guess. 8 shots of Americano. That'll last you a bit. No, buddy comes back every single day. And I'm like, how are you still alive?
That's a lot. And it's a
Is your
lot of
heart
money
okay?
too.
Like-
Yeah. And what's interesting, so my partner teaches high school, teaches in high school, and like right now, energy drinks are a huge problem that way. And I mean, that's nothing new, but it's something we're seeing so much of right now, where like her students will drink like 4 or 5 Red Bulls a day or Monsters a day. I mean, and they're dangerous, the heart issues that they can lead to. And it's that like, well, they sell it, it's just an energy drink. But if you read it, you're not supposed to drink that many of them, especially at that age. Did you have your hand up too, Lloyd? Or, oh, I thought you did. Okay. Yeah.
Been like a psychologist kind of like, I saw like look in the brain, but like, is there like Is it what it is? Someone who like, will become.
It's somewhat genetic, right? Like it is something that does tend to run in families. It can also be something that's modeled. What happens is that if there's conditioning involved most of the time, right? Where you take a substance and you feel better. So it's rewarding, so you want to take it again. Like over time, it does change the chemistry of your brain. So let's say you're constantly using a substance, it can change your chemistry permanently, right? Or it could just be temporary and restore back. But you can't necessarily see it, but it is something that is genetic and can have those like long lasting changes later on. Like, and especially things like alcohol, if you use it for years, it causes damage to certain parts of the brain. That you might be able to eventually see on like an MRI or a CAT scan. But it's wild how it can change your chemistry pretty profoundly. Yeah.
I think that, so backstories of friends, like I, in high school, like this had a period where I had to study a lot and I didn't drink coffee until I realized like I wanted to stay awake.
Yeah.
And I like despise sugary energy drinks, like it's not it. So I decided to like drink like 10 cups a day. And I had like 10 cups a day for like 3 months. And people, they tell me like, oh, are you not like jittery? Like, even today, like I could have a lot of caffeine, I don't get jittery. My friends after 1 cup, literally you're
Yeah.
jumping off the walls, and I don't get it. Like for me, it's confusing because it takes a lot for me to get to that
Sure.
point. So I feel like it's the difference in tolerance is also really interesting.
Oh, for sure. And the way that we react, and I think I shared this with you earlier in the semester too, my partner can drink a cup of coffee in bed and go to sleep. Like if I drink a cup of coffee after like 2 or 3 in the afternoon, like it affects my ability to sleep later. I mean, just everyone responds so differently to every substance and have different levels of tolerance.
Yeah.
And you often don't know what your level is until you find it, which can sometimes be problematic too. Yeah.
Is it normal for a tolerance to not really build? Because I've been drinking coffee every day since like 7th grade.
Yeah.
I'm like not happy if I don't have it, but I can drink more than like if I drink more than 2 cups, it ruins my day.
Sure, sure. Yeah, and that's not abnormal either, right? Like I drink a cup of coffee every morning. If I drink 2, I will feel horrible. It makes me jittery and my stomach will hurt. I could probably get used to that eventually, but luckily I tend to take that as a like, oh, that's too much, right? And back off. But some people just don't kind of need, not everyone develops tolerance.
Yeah.
It can happen. It's pretty common to happen, but not everybody, right? Some people, it's just steady. It's like it becomes your new like baseline in a sense. Like if you don't have it, you might not be happy. Like you said, you might not feel as good, but you don't necessarily develop the tolerance piece. But you would feel not so great if you didn't have it. Yeah.
The really scary thing about tolerance is that if you stop taking something for a long time.
Yeah.
Like a certain, that's how overdoses happen.
Yeah.
So like I have a really like benign example, like, you know, I had a few weeks where I was on vacation, so I didn't have any energy drinks. And so I went back and like, you know, I had an energy drink that like affected me really more.
Yeah.
Because I was used to taking, you know, that a certain amount of caffeine.
Mhm.
But then you hear about like those awful stories of like celebrities who like, you know, overdose on like heroin or something. because
Yeah.
They're so used to like taking,
Right.
like a large amount of it.
Yeah.
and, like, just like a certain amount of time.
Yeah, especially if you've taken a break from it
Yeah.
for like whatever reason, right?
Like if you
Yeah.
you're like relaxing,
Yeah.
that's how that's
You do get really dangerous situations when you're like, oh, I've always been taking this amount, but it's been a little bit and your body kind of drops down and isn't used to it. I have really high blood pressure. And so I'm not supposed to drink energy drinks because they're really bad for your heart. They like ramp up your heartbeat and the pressure on your heart really badly, the interaction of like all the things together. And I hadn't had one in like a month, right? I was being so good. I was like, I haven't had an energy drink in a month. And then like I wanted one, and so I had it, and I was just like through the roof, right? And I was like, I could drink 3 of these normally and not feel anything, and I was just jittery. So sometimes even just a short break, like you're talking about, like that can easily make it where it's so much stronger than you're used to, which can be dangerous, especially if you fall back into a pattern like that. Yeah.
It's like marijuana, like taking tea, right?
Yeah.
Like in my experience, it's like I was at a point where it's like I took it
Mhm.
and I would like be completely functional, like you wouldn't even have known.
other than like I read. And then I finally like stopped and now it's like I can.
Yeah.
I'm
Mm-hmm.
like so sensitive to it and I like feel like I throw up. I'm gonna throw up.
Yeah.
Like it ruined, like I grew such a tolerance when I like stopped and went back, it made me sick.
Yeah.
Like I just like can't smoke weed anymore.
Yeah, and our tolerance can also just change over time too, as we age. Sometimes we handle substances better or worse over time. But yeah, like you can easily build that up, right? Yeah. I'll go here now, Becca.
Something really interesting, like, that I heard from somebody who used to drink a Monster but now doesn't, was his reasoning wasn't for like the health concerns, because he wouldn't drink it a lot, but the food dye in it
Yeah.
is so bad for your health, because I'm sorry if you guys like, I'm not trying to gross you out, but like, the dye is from bugs. They use food dye from bugs to dye it. And then I learned that I had every reason to never even try in my life.
Sure.
And it was really interesting because you don't realize how much garbage is in like the drinks. Like forget the heart problems.
Mm-hmm.
Like think of what was in that one can. You don't know what. No, sorry.
That
for
bug
real.
dye tastes so good though.
No, I'm sorry. It does, but like it's. I don't know. It grosses me out. So
Yeah, yeah.
I'm forever never gonna look at the same.
Yeah, and sometimes knowing what's in a substance can help you to not use it as much, right?
Yeah.
So that's a good example of that. Yeah.
Family, and like we all have coffee addiction.
Yeah.
It's really bad, but like it's not that bad. And our favorite thing to do is play like the Russian roulette game with like, do I have a headache because I haven't had caffeine, or am I dehydrated from having
Right.
too much caffeine? Do I fix the problem by drinking more caffeine, or do I try to drink water? And then if it's not working, then is it because I'm too dehydrated or I need more caffeine?
Right.
And it's like this endless loop where we all just like, we're like, we should drink water, but let's go get more caffeine.
Just in case that was the problem, like, see if you can fix it,
Like,
right?
you never know. Like,
Yeah.
let's just have more caffeine.
Right.
I'm saying sorry.
Yeah. And I love that you all have that culture and can own it, right? Like, and there's nothing wrong with like using caffeine. Like I keep saying caffeine because it's just an easy one. But a lot of people can use a substance and it's not necessarily a problem, right? But it can become one, right? When you're spending money on it, right? You feel lousy. Like I had friends that I worked with at Starbucks, when their coffee wore off, they were nightmares to be around, right? And they would like borderline lose friendships if they didn't have their caffeine, right? That's when it starts to become an issue, is when it's affecting your personality, it's affecting your health, it's affecting your relationships, your responsibilities, your finances, right? A lot of people can manage a substance and be okay, but when it causes that significant distress and impairment, it's interfering, that's when it's a, yeah.
How do you like psychologically explain that is able to like partake and like, it's like occasional fun, and then someone who's like,
Yeah.
it doesn't like.
It could be chemistry in their body, right? For some people, one time is all it takes. And other people can use a substance forever and never develop a problem. So it's genetics, it's chemistry, it's conditioning, it's willpower for some. There's so many factors that there's no like easy explanation, which is what makes these so tricky. That like maybe 15 of you in here you could all use the same substance. 15 of you would be fine, 15 of you wouldn't, right? Like, and that's even just a random guess. Like it just, everyone is so different in the way you respond. That's what makes it so unpredictably tricky. There was another hand over here.
Yeah, I was I didn't like, I don't really know that much about substance, but I saw it was like a, I think it was John.
Uh-huh.
That problem. Would spend his whole day thinking about the next day.
Right.
How he was gonna get his hands on some more of what he was thinking.
Yeah.
I don't know, it was like, obviously he was so good at his sleep.
Right.
It was like an interesting, insight. in what
Yeah.
thought process. It's- It really is like, I never realized that it will like consume like your whole
Right.
like thought process.
You're just sitting there thinking about it, right? I think I know what you're talking about. I've seen a lot of his like routines too. I like stand-up comedy, right? But yeah, the fact that you would be today thinking about when you're gonna get it tomorrow, that's that like lots of time, right? It takes up your time. And I forgot one up here, and that's craving. Right? You crave that substance, you think about it, you want it, kind of like you're describing there. It's just something that just really consumes a lot of your time and energy. And a little different, and so you asked, you didn't understand the difference, right? So a substance use disorder, your issue, your disorder is the use of the substance. Okay, so you're struggling with caffeine, struggling with marijuana, with nicotine, with cocaine, whatever it might be. Your use of the drug is the disorder. Okay, this one here, a substance-induced disorder, is when you start to develop other mental illness struggles because you used a substance. So classic example of this, have you ever heard of someone having substance-induced schizophrenia, for example? Right, so somebody used LSD and it causes them to develop schizophrenia. Okay, now there are a lot of caveats to that. They would have had to have a biological predisposition. That would be like the diathesis. We'll talk about schizophrenia next week, right? That'll be our next topic. So if somebody develops anxiety because they were using cocaine, right? It made them jittery and anxious. That substance induced or caused another disorder. And that's the essence of this one. So maybe someone has substance-induced schizophrenia, substance-induced anxiety, right? So the use of a drug caused them to develop something else. Can be a little bit tricky to figure out which came first, right? Did they start using the substance because they had schizophrenia, or did the schizophrenia lead, or did the substance lead to the schizophrenia, if that makes sense, right? Sometimes it's hard to tell, but that's what a substance-induced disorder is. Does that make sense? A little bit different. So the use of the drug is the problem versus the drug causes something else to be the problem. Yeah.
So say for example, obviously. With like the hallucination, like when you smoke weed, you're very.
Yeah.
You're most likely gonna hallucinate. If someone then like thinks they're in a whole other reality, is that considered normal or is that considered substance?
It would depend how long it lasted. Okay, so like while you're on the substance, it would be like intoxication, a temporary thing to believe that like you are in another place, right? Because you're using the substance that's in your system. But if even after you've used the substance, you're still hallucinating and having issues, then it might have caused a longer lasting issue, in which case it induced or caused a different disorder. So we look at timing, like how long it lasts and if it's beyond the use of the substance or not. Yeah.
That's kind of what I was.
Yeah. Right.
Schizophrenia, so that
Mhm.
still count as a substance use disorder.
Yeah.
It's been like 5-6 years.
Yeah, if that was thought to be the cause of it. And over time, it might just be that it was diagnosed with schizophrenia, but initially, it would probably be substance-induced schizophrenia because it would be attributed to the use of the acid. Which, again, it could have been the acid or not, right? We don't always know, but there's often like kind of a correlation there that we would use this to be like, okay, well, it didn't develop due to some kind of other circumstance, it was because of the drug. And sometimes knowing that it can shape treatment, or sometimes over time it'll correct itself and go away. And interestingly, schizophrenia goes away about half the time too. Yeah, we'll talk about that too. Well, that's more like quarter. Yeah. Mhm. Right. Yeah, that's the scary thing is sometimes it's one time, and you're not the same. Other times people can use it, 50 to 100 times and they don't develop a problem. And you just don't know which one you're gonna be, right? And that was always the thing that scared me about substances was I don't know how I'm gonna respond to it or if there's gonna be a long-term effect. And that can be scary, right? Especially when drugs, you don't always know what's in them, right? And you can't always trust the source of them, right? So that's what makes them so unpredictable. They also have this really wild tendency to interact with each other. Really common that people use more than one substance, right? They combine things together. We're talking about like energy drinks, really common to combine energy drinks and alcohol together, right? Like a Red Bull and vodka or whatever, right? Like lots of different combinations. Those things together can create what's called a synergistic effect, and they make them even more dangerous. So synergy, we sometimes talk about as like a good thing, like when groups get together, they can be synergy, have this like great energy where they create more together than they would on their own. With a drug, right, what we're seeing is these two drugs interact with each other in some way that makes them unpredictable. And this leads to a lot of overdoses and accidental deaths. Okay, especially when you combine like two sedatives together. I always think of, Bridesmaids where she like has alcohol and a Xanax and then she's like hallucinating. There's a continental woman on the wing, right? Like she's like hallucinating on the plane because she was anxious about flying. When you combine two substances together, they act really, really unpredictably. There have been so many cases. These are just a few of like really big people, right, who died from interactions of drugs. And sometimes they are like prescribed and sometimes they're not. But like a lot of people who had tragic endings as a result of combining substances together. We could add even more. These are just a few. Yeah.
I think this experience today, I feel so stupid because I have something on it as science, but I accidentally like, so I have a cold right now.
Yeah.
It's like I'm recovering, but yesterday I was like taking cold medicine.
Yeah.
And it was like stronger cold medicine, like medicine.
Yeah.
And I also take like a specific like antidepressant.
Yes.
And that combination, you literally talked about it.
I know exactly where
I
you're going with
felt
this.
like
Yeah.
I died.
Uh-huh.
I like felt like lobotomized, like I couldn't like focus a lot.
Yeah.
It was so bad.
From a
I
cold
feel better
medicine and an
now, but-
antidepressant.
Yeah.
Which are
exactly.
commonly used, legal prescribed
To
substances.
be fair,
Yeah.
yeah, my doctor didn't tell me anything about that.
Yeah.
I blame them.
Yeah. You should blame them. I blame them too, right? And I shared the same story with you. I literally was like this close to a stroke because of a cough medicine and an antidepressant. Like, and I got serotonin syndrome from it. Like, I had no idea. No one warned me that there was one cough medicine you can't take with it. You know.
Caused syndrome because it wasn't necessary. But,
Yeah.
It was excess like dopamine.
Yeah.
Also made me feel. I felt super out of touch with my body.
Yeah. And from really common substances, it's scary how things can have that like interaction with each other. And sometimes it catches you really off guard when it's things that you wouldn't expect, right? Like you always think of this kind of stuff with like really heavy drugs. It can be something as mild as like cough medication. Yeah.
Major interaction.
Uh-huh.
Big red.
Well, like, oh, good to know now. Yeah.
Great.
Right.
I'm gonna die.
Yeah, I know. I just don't take cold medication anymore. I don't trust any of them anymore. Yeah.
So agree. There was one year where I tried COVID and it was over Christmas and my dad was like, "Okay, take this means next, it'll knock you out, you'll have a good night's sleep," and then it'll be good. I could not sleep that night. I was sweating horrendously and I had terrible nightmares.
Yeah.
But I couldn't, the worst part is because of Mucinex and it's cold medicine for nighttime,
Yeah.
it shoves you back to sleep.
Yeah.
And so I was waking up with nightmares, but then getting shoved back into it while in a cold sweat.
Yeah.
That
sounds Like a great time, right?
Absolutely not. Never again will I ever
Yeah.
take Mucinex. I don't take cold medicine.
Right, look at all of us are like, the message of today, don't take cold medicine, just tough it out. Right? I mean, again, it's hard to know, right? And when you find things that work for you, then you tend to stay with them because you trust them, right? But it's dangerous when you combine things together. That's that synergy. So you have to be really careful when people start having like cocktails of medication or drinks that you're like combining with it or other substances. It can be really unpredictable. Even something like cough medication, right? A couple of causes here. This is something that can have a lot of elements. So just like eating disorders, kind of this like multi-dimensional perspective here. Culturally, there's a lot of correlations with low socioeconomic status, racial like inequality, like, and a lot of like correlations with socioeconomic stuff when it comes to higher propensity toward substance disorders. Freud would say it's dependency, that you struggled with dependency as a child, so now you're dependent on a drug as an adult. So Freudian, you're probably dependent on your mom, and now you're dependent on a drug, right? Everything goes back to the mom and like childhood with Freud. But very powerful dependency needs kind of translating to being dependent as an adult. Cognitively and behaviorally, like I said earlier, conditioning is huge with substances. You're feeling really anxious and scared, you take a drug and now you're calm and mellow and relaxed. That's rewarding. And then people do it again, right? Or you're tired and you can't sleep, or I'm sorry, you're tired, you can't like wake up, right? And so you drink some coffee and now you're awake and you can function. Rewarding, right? And you tend to do it again. There's a lot of conditioning involved with substances, the way it makes you feel, the like ability that it maybe gives you at times, cognitively, the thoughts that you have around it, right? The beliefs that you have and develop over time. And then biologically, like I said, it can be somewhat genetic. Sometimes people have a deficiency in their like dopamine rich pathway in the brain. And so they don't get that same rush that you would get naturally. And so you feel like you need to create it through substances. So when people have this like reward deficiency syndrome where you're not getting as much dopamine naturally, you might artificially feel like you need to create it, which can kind of contribute to being addicted to substances. So there are some biological components that might fuel it. It's a lot like too. Yeah. Yeah, so it could be depressed, or it could just be that you don't get that like thrill or like rush. You know, when something good happens and you feel that like rush of happiness or excitement, some people don't get as much of that. They have like a little bit of a deficiency in that pathway. And so it could manifest as depression, or it could be more mild than that, that you just don't get that same level of thrill and rush. And so you seek it through a substance that's going to give you a stronger effect, if that makes sense. So combination of these, treatment is then a combination as well, right? So Freud would say that we need to go back and figure out where the dependency needs came from. Right, so we're going to go back, we're going to identify where that started, we're going to work through it. That'll help change whatever's going on now. Not the most common type of therapy, as we've talked about a few times, but the idea there is sound, right? If you have dependency needs, you're dependent because of a hole in your life. A lot of people use drugs to try and fill a hole. Let's go back and see where that hole started and try and work through and heal it. And that should, in theory, help with the dependency. There's also a lot of like behavioral and cognitive behavioral therapies. Now, one common one, and this is used a lot with like alcohol, for example, is something called aversion therapy, where you make yourself sick as a way of trying to get yourself to stop using the substance. Now, this used to be popular in like the 80s and 90s. It was such a popular thing to do. I'm going to have my kid drink so much alcohol till they vomit from it, so they never want to drink it again. Or I'm going to make my kids smoke an entire carton of cigarettes so that they hate cigarettes and think they're disgusting. Not a good tactic, or, we don't tend to do that as much now. But the idea behind that is kind of what we're getting at here. If you take a substance and it makes you sick, that's like a punishment in a way, and that's going to undo some of that conditioning. There are drugs that you can take that make you vomit the second you drink alcohol. Now, the easy solution is if you know you're going to drink, you don't take the drug, right? But there are ways around, like with this, right, to try and make you sick when you use a substance in hopes of kind of reconditioning you out of using it. We can also do a lot of like journaling. This one's a big one, behavioral self-control training. It's fancy like term for journaling in essence. What you do is you keep a journal of when did I crave the substance? Who was I around? What time of day was it? How was I feeling before and after? I'm looking at all the triggers and all the thoughts, very like CBT, cognitive behavioral down here. But it's looking at all of those things and trying to identify some of those patterns, come up with some coping strategies. Who are your triggers? What are your triggers? Is it a time of day? Is it a person? Right? And how can we maybe eliminate some of them? And so kind of a combination of those two. There's also a lot of like biological things we can do. Typically, if somebody is really severely addicted to a drug, the first thing you have to do is get them off of it, right? You have to detox. And this depends on the drug, right? Some drugs you can detox on your own and do it kind of slowly. Other drugs, you might need medical help to do that. If you drink an incredible amount of alcohol every day and stop cold turkey, it could kill you, right? There are certain drugs that are like that. Certain drugs that are notoriously hard to get off of, like heroin. Heroin is one of the most addictive substances. So is nicotine. Cigarettes are one of the most addictive substances out there because it takes effect so quickly. So we have to get off of it. We can do this through either like a slow detox or like a cold turkey where you just stop. There are certain drugs that sometimes change the effect of another drug, or sometimes we'll even give someone a lesser version of a drug to get them off of it. It's like you're trying to quit smoking, so you take like the nicotine patch or nicotine gum. It's a lesser amount of the same drug that's more controlled to help you get off of it, or methadone to help you get off of heroin. You could become addicted to those other substances, but they're thought to kind of be a little bit helpful in transitioning away. So getting someone off of a substance is one of the like best things you can do right away. Got to get it out of their system and then see what we're left with and then go from there. There's also a lot of like kind of bigger like sociocultural therapies, things like AA, NA, really common like groups. These are self-help groups more than like a group therapy. Because they're not led by a therapist, they're led by like people with more experience. But like AA or NA, for example, going in and going through like 12-step programs, having a sponsor, having people who are there to support you, having a community, getting the little rewards if you get your little chip when you make it to certain points. It's conditioning again to try and help reward you. Maybe going into a residential treatment center, right? Oftentimes people are hospitalized or they go to facilities where they get off of these medications or drugs in order to kind of transition back into life. And these are really expensive to go to, but they can be very helpful. Kind of like with eating disorders, you go and like, it's this whole comprehensive program where you're getting off of a substance, receiving therapy, and so on. And also trying to prevent, right? My kids, it's all about like, they have their red ribbon week every like year in school. Like we had DARE, like growing up, like just so many different programs trying to educate and prevent. Teaching people like the dangers of substances as a way to hope that they don't use them as much when they're older. Yeah. Yeah, and remember they're all on campus too. Any like questions or thoughts or anything for the moment? I have a little like case study similar to the one with the eating disorder, but any thoughts, comments, stories, questions, anything? Let me grab this here. So I have this study, and again, this one is also like a true story. This is somebody who's like personal narrative. It's a young woman struggling with ecstasy, a very commonly abused substance. So I'm going to hand this out, and then on the back there are 3 questions that you're going to answer and turn in, and we'll talk about it together. So maybe read through this on your own, and then you can find a couple of people around you, and you only have to turn in 1, unless you'd like to turn in your own. That's fine too. And feel free to like mark on the front if you guys are reading it. If you notice something that's like a good example or sign, maybe underline it or mark it. It's funny how even like 40 years later, I still hear my 5th grade teacher. Every time I pass out papers, it's been like 40 years, no, like 35 maybe. Every time I pass out papers and like they stick together, I get anxiety and I'm like, I got a U in 5th grade for being a bad paper passer.
That's great.
Right? I do, like unsatisfactory. My citizenship grade was a U. Right? I just think she didn't like me because I had short hair. It was ironic because she got short hair. I have theories, but that's okay. But even like 35 years later, I think about it every time I hand out papers, right? As I'm handing them out, I'm like, I'm a bad paper passer. Anyway, I don't know why I share these things, right? Read through it and then start working on it together. And then as you finish, answer those 3 questions on the back. You can just do bullets. That's totally fine. Feel free to do it with another person if you would like.
She said like, no,